I remember hearing some time ago this expression. I first heard it. I think I've only ever heard it really in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, particularly the teacher Longchenpa, who spoke about the equalness of everything, discovering the equalness of everything, and you could say the way in which everything is fundamentally the same. It's equal, and it's fair to ask when hearing something like, what could that possibly mean in the context of the way in which reality appears uh, completely distinct, one moment from the next, one phenomena from the next, one flavor of life from the next. I mean, it's nothing but difference. So, in what exactly is Longchenpa referring to by the equalness of everything and discovering really essentially how there's one thing here that's not really a thing, but so just as you're sitting here, here is all this incredible array of the multiplicity, seeming multiplicity, the great magical display of life appearing. And notice as you're sitting here how everything is equal in terms of its being. You could say equal in terms of its being here. So you could feel great sense of peace and ease, you might describe as peace and ease. And that experience that's being labeled that way is here. It's showing up, right? Or you may be describing your experience as very frustrated and agitated, and that description is also being here, isn't it? And so those two very distinctive flavors are equal in their being here. If you take two very different, let's say physical phenomena like a lightning storm and a calm sunny day, completely different, but completely equal in their being here, right? In their appearance, their appearing. So everything is equal in its presence. When we start to notice what is equal about everything, we're familiarizing ourselves with the one thing. I often talk about how, everything's slipping away, right? Everything is changing. There's no possibility of holding any particular circumstance or experience in place. Once we think we've arrived at the state of mind or the circumstance that we want or have wished for or imagined to be what it is we're seeking, of course it slips away. That's the nature. Can't ever hold, you've never been able to hold any moment in place because look right now and they're all gone. Every moment that's ever arisen is gone, isn't it? And yet something's here, always here, which isn't a particular thing or a particular state that's always here. It's not a particular aspect of reality that's always here. It is reality itself that's always here. It's just always appearing differently, right? But the equalness is the appearing itself. So everything is equal in its appearing. It's not like it appears more. The loud music is not appearing more than the quiet music. They're equal in that they're here, right? Equal in their being. Everything is equal in its aliveness. Everything is alive, equally alive. Alive in the sense of its presence, not in terms of some sort of volume of Well, I feel a little bit alive, or now I feel really alive. Like that's very different. But again, the aliveness is the presence, the sheer here-ness, the sheer existence of everything. And that doesn't waver. That never is never diminished by its seeming description and appearance. It's always equal. And so everything is equal in its sheer being, its sheer existence. Everything is equal in its ever-changing nature, isn't it? In the fact of its instability, its slipperiness, its constant vanishing. Everything is equal in its being awake. Every moment, regardless of its description, is fully awake. Awake in the sense of um, the moment is always known by definition. If it's showing up, it's being known, it's being perceived, right? So everything is equal in its being perceived. Pain is equal to pleasure in that they're both being perceived. The perceiving is the equalness. That's the wakefulness of everything. Now, part of the purpose of what I'm pointing to right now is that we hear, in different teachings, these different things like presence and awakening and wakefulness and the ground of being and so on. And it's easy to hear any word that's being talked about and imagine it as something particular, right? Otherwise, why do we have a word for it? The word presumably points out the ways in which it's distinct from things that are not that word, right? In other words, presence as opposed to absence, right? Or the ground of being as opposed to, I don't know, some superficial aspect of experiencing. Not the ground, not the root, but some, surface level, superficial level aspect of experiencing. But actually, these words, a ground of being and presence and so on, and wakefulness are really pointing to something that has no opposite, something that has no alternative. The presence and aliveness and beingness that I'm speaking about as what is equal about everything is not in contrast to some absence of being, absence of presence, right? No, this is the presence of reality itself and there's no non-presence ever. What would that even look like? There's only reality. So everything is equal in its being here, you see? Everything is equal in its miraculous presence, its inexplicable presence, right? Equal in its, everything is equal, utterly distinct, right? In terms of, again, its presentation, the way it looks seemingly, and the way it seems to be descriptively nothing but difference, but uh, absolutely equal in its being beyond the reach, ultimately, of language. So we could describe pleasurable moments seemingly, and describe less pleasurable, painful moments, right? As having a certain kind of, yeah, like something recognizable about them that leads us to label them in such ways. And yet, when we go to look for what makes pleasure pleasure and what makes pain pain, to get to the bottom of what they are, the essence of what they are, the root of what they are, uh, we always come up empty-handed. That basis, that root, that essence is unreachable. It's indeterminate. It is beyond the reach of the conceiving mind, beyond the reach of anything. That's its unresolvability. It can't be resolved as to what it is. And everything is equal in its being that way, in being unfathomable. So when we recognize the way in which the moment is lies beyond the reach of language and concepts, as it does inherently, it transcends that. When we see that in any moment, we're seeing the basis not of that specific experience, but the basis of every experience. And that again is the equalness of everything. It's unresolvability. It's infinity. Everything is equal in its edgeless, boundaryless nature, right? Like every experience, even though it seems like the mind has succeeded at putting some sort of frame around it to describe its parameters, its edges, right? Its definition. When you look at experience, and as we're doing here now, you just, no matter the experience and how it's being described, everything is equal in its having no actual boundary to it, no edge, no findable edge to it, no end to it. So equal in everything, equal in its complete, unbounded openness. And all of what I'm pointing to and sharing right now is um, reveals the way in which what we're really looking for, that ground, the one thing being everything, doesn't require that there be a different experience here because all of the experience is equally the one reality, right? Equally the ground, equally the presence of reality. And in that sense, there's no hierarchy of experience. There's no experience that is more awake, more enlightened, more it than another. They're all equal. And that's the unconditioned nature of this. It's not conditioned by what it looks like. It's not dependent upon what's appearing. It is the flow of appearing itself. And so you're always home. You are home because there's only that.